Hi, this is the Social Gelo with Angelo show. My name's Angelo. I'm a social scientist, surfer, martial artist, and a whole lot of other things. Coming to you live from Kasai City, Japan, the Social Gelo with Angelo show.
What's up, and welcome to another episode of Social Gelo with Angelo podcast. You saw in the title, Why Are People Banning Sparring? The Controversy Explained. We have some more guests that are going to be on the way in right now to explain a little more about this. But Social Gelo with Angelo podcast, conversations with a back fist. I've got to get that tagline more nailed in. Share and like and subscribe with your friends if you like what you see. We're doing this thing where we're talking about, I've had these people on the show before, and if you've been on my show before, if you've seen my content before, you've seen, I'm trying to say this right, Kaolani.
Ilani.
Kailani. I always miss that syllable. You've seen Kailani before, and he runs a Gracie school out in Idaho. And as I mentioned earlier, he was on the show before, and people, in Joker's words, they lost their minds, because he said that he did. I think it's like how many months do your white belts go without sparring?
It's a few months.
It's a few months. It's a few months. And he's not doing this off the top of his head. It's not like he woke up one day and he said, you know what? I decided to piss off the entire martial arts community and stop sparring for the first 3 months. Just I feel like that's what I feel like doing. That's not what he did. He's coming from a very reputable program. Can I mention the name? Is that cool?
Sure.
Okay. So he's coming from the Gracie University program, which is part of a larger, like some of the best martial artists in the world got together and figured out that this would be a great way to get people started into their programs. So it's not like he came up with this on his own. And then Dan, a few weeks ago, decided to jump on the Kajikembo training page, if you haven't heard of that, and he posted something very similar. Dan Tyrell from Dan Tyrell Martial Arts, he runs a few different schools, a few different locations, and several different programs from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to kickboxing, and has instructors running his programs. And he mentioned the same thing. He said, hey, from a business perspective, if you have a lot of hard sparring and people getting injured, then it's kind of bad for business. Students are going to want to quit. You're not going to retain as many students. Parents definitely don't like it. And he posed the same kind of question. Well, how do you minimize risk while still emphasizing, effective self-defense in the middle of all this? So this is the question they have. And they're both content creators. People got kind of confused about a content creator. I'm not talking about the fast talking like me with a podcast or someone sitting there, like a Stephen Kesting doing instructionals and stuff. But the idea of content creation in the form of text or a photo where you're kind of pushing your brand, whatever that is, whether it's your martial arts or your personal brand. So they kind of fall into that category of people who have a personal brand and martial arts schools that they're trying to promote to get more students. So they are outstanding members in the community, which is why I wanted them on the show, because everyone's kind of upset about this. And let's find out, why is it that people get so upset about when you bring up no sparring? We'll start with that. And then B, why is there this trend in people sparring less? And I'm going to grab this, and I'm just going to start off with Kawilani to open up on that.
So the first question was why is the no sparring trend coming into play? Was that the first question? So to first and foremost, I'm not against sparring. I'm actually a huge advocate for sparring, just sparring correctly and safely. I believe it's a new thing today because it is a way to keep retention in somebody's school. Kind of gone are the days that people are just teaching out of their garages or out of a neighborhood center or something like that. People are wanting to make this a business for themselves. And without students, you don't have a business, right? So in order to retain students, and then also in order for them to, we're not talking about people that are trying to get into the UFC today, right? Now, some of them are, but 90% of at least my clientele are everyday Joes, stay-at-home moms, guys that work behind cubicles, and they want to learn how to defend themselves, but they can't risk getting black eyes every week and going to work, right? So I think that's the reason why this trend is happening. And then what was your second question?
And then my second question was why. Well, you kind of answered it though. So
Okay,
my
there we
first
go.
question is why is it trending, and then why are people emphasizing going towards less sparring,
Yeah,
and then there's a third question in there that I'm not going to bring up right now, but you
okay,
nailed both. You answered them both. Like
perfect.
if we were running, if we what if we were doing a Jeopardy? There you go. You got your $500 for answering the question correctly.
Okay.
So Dan, same question. And what made you want to stir the pot? Like you woke up and chose violence that morning on the Kaja Kimbo training page. What was that all about?
I'm not trying to choose violence, man. I'm a peaceful guy. Um, but I think sometimes you gotta shake the tree a little bit to get to people to think. And when we were getting ready for a Muay Thai event, and that's when the concept came up because a lot of my guys they showed up and they just, hey, let's put the gloves on, let's spar. And I'm like, like, I mean, I get it, it's fun, sparring's fun. Um, Pad drills and drilling is boring, but that's how you're going to get better because you're training your body to respond in a way that is going to be how you're going to respond better at the actual event. And not only that, but you can do it at a much higher percentage of effort. So like when we're sparring, everybody's like, I got sidekicks today. Everybody's like, hey, you need to spar like 50% or 30%. No coach out there and on the planet's like, hey, pretend it's the ADCCs and I want you to go all out, balls out, baby, right? No, nobody does that, right? But you can drill at that higher percentage level, and that's how you get better. And that's why I want my fighters to do that, students to do that. And when I pose that question out there, it's like, hey, what do you guys think? There's a lot of blowback. So sometimes it looks like, Dan's trying to make people mad. And I'm not. I just want them to think about it.
And I think one of the biggest reactions, and that's why I wanted you both on the show, because I saw the same reaction when Kailani came on a while back, and all we were talking about that day was what white belts should go through to get into a program. That's all we were talking about. And nowhere, and I'll put it this, I don't want to put words in Kailani's mouth, but he never said no sparring. Like people heard no sparring, and that's why I joke around about the Joker saying they lost their minds because that's all they honed in on. And then you had a bunch of people talking about kicking people in the nuts and how they sparred uphill in the snow both ways when they were coming up in the ranks, and how this generation is just soft and blah, blah, blah. And that whole theme jumped in real quick. And with people really upset, I got phone calls, brother. I forgot to tell you, I got phone calls from instructors. What do you mean no sparring? It's like, well, did you watch the whole thing? Like he literally just said as an introductory course for the first 3 months, you don't spar, but you do get to it eventually. It's not like it's been cut out completely. Now, that being said, what response do you have for those people that feel that this newer generation of martial artists aren't as tough as the previous generation? Ooh, that's a loaded topic. I'll Kailani looks like he's ready to go. I'm gonna let you. You get ready to go. Go for it. Go for it, man. What do you think?
Well, here's a caveat. Everybody thinks I'm just the jujitsu guy. I'm not. I have black belts in other things, including Kaju Kembo, and I've spent a lot of time with Sijo as a child, so I know what it's like to train really hard. As a competitor, I'm a product of sparring too hard. I'm retired now. I haven't fought in years because I have some major, major injuries and some head stuff that I'm dealing with that prevent me from fighting because I was the dummy that grew up in that environment of train super duper hard every time. And I left my, in a sense, career in the academy, in the gym. I didn't get to retire in a ring, right? So coming from that personally, I think it's a bunch of nonsense of people that only think that kicking somebody in the balls or anything like that, like they're not. Here's the deal. When guys like that come like from that side of it, like to talk about we spar super hard, we kick each other in the nuts and blah blah blah. Their sparring looks like really bad kickboxing. So I don't know what to tell you, right?
Shots fired.
Science has come really, really far. And if you look at today's top UFC fighters, they are not going as hard as they can every training session. If you look at, I was just listening to a podcast with Faraz Sahabi, George St. Pierre's coach. They do not spar hard when it comes closer to when they're closer in fight camp, closer to the fight. They turn it up a bit, absolutely, and I believe you should do that. But the old generation, I'm sorry, I just don't think you have the science based behind training. And especially when we're talking about fighters of today, um, they have to train at the highest level they can, as well as the smartest way they can to preserve their bodies for the fight. Unlike me, who didn't do that, and I'm not fighting anymore.
Damn, man, just spitting fire there. All right, so yeah, that's all right. Dan, what do you have to add to that?
You're spot on, man. Definitely, like, we're sharing a brain on that one. I think I don't know if I have much to add on that one. I try to show respect to the seniors and the way they train. They trained the way they did because that's what they knew. And it doesn't make it better. Right? I think it was John Bono who had talked about, hey, we can appreciate the 57 Corvette. Like, that's a beautiful ride, and it's fast and it's great, but is it comparable to like the 2025 Corvette? It's not even close. Why? Because technology is better and the product is better. So, are the newer fighters not as tough? No, they're just as tough. And just because they do it different doesn't make it wrong. Just because the seniors did it the way they did it doesn't make it wrong. That was how it was done back then. But if they continue to press that, like, no, we need to do it this way. It's kind of like spanking your kids, like I think as a society, we all know, like, there's still people that spank their kids, but it's really frowned upon because we know better. So let's do better. That's my thoughts.
All right, a few landmines on that one. So I'm gonna dodge some of these. Here's the other thing that comes up, and this goes with what Kailani said earlier about how he brought up an example of the UFC fighters. So I'm going to expand this question some more to include some more common themes that I see from other martial arts content creators. And again, I'm going to keep redefining not the fast talking content creators like me, but the content creators that are using either text or visual aids to talk about stuff. And one of the things they talk about is the idea that, and what you'll see they do is they tend to talk a lot about the streets. Oh, the streets, and how the streets don't compare to UFC. That's not real street fighting. And you see this across the board, I would say across styles, but yeah, well, I've seen it in jiu-jitsu as well. Like, I can say, oh, Brazilian jiu-jitsu doesn't do this. No, I've seen Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys talk about that too. This is a pretty common theme. And for those content creators, like I said, it could be a video or it could just be them ranting online. I've seen a lot of that, like paragraph per paragraph of how the streets aren't the UFC. And I want to say the more rhetoric I see on this comes a lot more from people who don't do stuff like jiu-jitsu, but everyone's kind of guilty of this, so I can't really pinpoint one style on this one. I'm just going to say martial arts in general, most people in the United States walk into the place because they want to defend themselves in the streets. They don't see themselves fighting in a cage. Very small percentage will come in for that. Most people walk in because they say, I want to protect myself, or I don't want my kid to be bullied. So the first thing they're thinking are the streets. And then the second thing any other martial artist who's trying to like bring in people to their program will say is the streets, and my style will keep you safe on the streets. And then some people will bring it up to one more level. And like I said, I've seen jiu-jitsu guys do this too, so I can't exactly say that jiu-jitsu guys don't do this. they'll say that the UFC isn't a correct representation of the street. So therefore, the argument that you just mentioned earlier about George St. Pierre changing his training right before a fight is not the Japanese term kankenai comes to word, which means there is no relationship or correlation between the two because these are apples to oranges. What is your response to this kind of rhetoric? And since we did start with Kailani Lee last time, we'll give Dan a shot to tackle the question first.
Oh, ruffle feathers, not ruffle feathers. All right, we'll go not ruffle. The thought process that people have when it comes to like doing street versus sport, and they say, well, you know, we need to spar hard so that way we can be prepared for the street. So let's do it in that context. If you spar hard, your risk of injury goes well up. And the most important, like, okay, even the people that are training for the cage or for competition, the ring, the paramount thing is to be training to defend yourself, to defend your family, that sort of thing. If we're going with that context, there's an offshoot to that we don't have to go down. But if I'm injured because I'm sparring, am I going to be able to defend myself? If I blow out my knee because I'm playing too hard, if I break my hand because I'm playing too, am I going to be able to defend myself and my family? The answer is no. So, like, if I'm going to look at it from that context, the risk versus reward factor, oh, we got to be badass. Well, if I'm badass on the mat and I get injured and I get jumped, they're not going to say like, hey, okay, time out. Oh, he's injured, never fucking mind, right? But like, if you go and say, well, at least like with the ring, okay, somebody like gets injured, you know, they stub their toe or whatever before their match, and then they have to call it all off. Well, okay, it's called off. We'll fast forward 6 weeks and we'll do it again, right? That doesn't happen on the street. So all those people are like, no, for the street we got to train hard. It's like, no, what you really have to do is train smart. It is. I mean, you can train hard, just train smart while you do it. And sparring isn't necessarily training smart, to be honest. Anyways,
All
it's
right.
mine.
There's your 2 pesos. All right, so, okay. So, Colin.
I'm actually in the camp of MMA competition is not the same as self-defense on the street. I'm in that camp actually. The rule set of MMA is a rule set and not like the street. In the street, there's weapons involved potentially, there's multiple people involved potentially. You can run somebody up under a car. There's the environment. There is, and I hate to use it, but there is eye gouging and growing striking and hair pulling. There's 12 to 6 elbows that MMA doesn't allow, right? However, here's the thing. MMA, or even let's just say jiu-jitsu competition, is the closest thing that we can get to a fight at the fullest potential as far as energy expenditure and adrenaline, right? That's the closest thing that we can get to a fight without actually getting into a fight on the street, which I don't advise. You just like what Dan said, you can train, you can spar, but you don't have to spar hard. You can spar smart. Now, for me, and like at least with my school, we're 100% dedicated to self-defense. So when we're sparring, we are sparring with the mindset and with the attitude and techniques that have to work with strikes, weapons, distance management, control, things of that nature. But this is what I have found through sparring, and let's just keep it towards more of just an all-around fight, MMA fight, I guess, or stand-up fight. If you are going 100% in the training room, you are no longer practicing, you are surviving. You're going into a lizard brain mentality and doing the things you already know. Sparring is for education and for practicing those techniques that your instructor is teaching you so you can use those in a fight. But if you're going as hard as you can and my adrenaline dump starts happening and I'm getting beat up, I'm just surviving now, I'm not learning, and I'm having potential injuries, we have to also think about CTE is a real thing. You're constantly getting cracked in the head and getting those mini concussions, or you do get concussed. That brings your training life down. So if you want to go super hard because we're training for the streets, you're not, number one, you're not getting the full potential of what you could get in your I would say your skill level or what the instructor has to give you. And you are also not giving your martial arts life any help because you're getting injured. Even if you're not getting injured, you're wearing your body down.
Yeah, I mean, again, I agree with both the points you're saying. One thing I do have to mention, because there's a lot of martial arts nerds that that follow the show. 12-6 elbows are now allowed as of last year in November. The UFC actually brought them back in. They also brought
Who's in
in,
the UFC though, right?
yeah,
Like
really, come on.
that's the 1% level. What
Yeah.
about all the other MMA,
But
right?
yeah, mostly this is for all the martial arts nerds who were like, when you mentioned that, oh, 12-6
Oh,
elbows, or
sorry.
no, 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 either way, this is actually to attend to the people who actually feel that, cage fighting, there is a relationship between. But anyway, because all sorts of people listen to the show. And the funny thing is that when I make clips of this later, the fun part is when your clip comes out and the whole podcast isn't watched and they just hear you say that, and then I have to sit there and be like, well, watch the show because we talked about here. So either way, I'll deal with that one later. But yeah, I mean, that you guys are both touching on very similar points, right? This whole idea that they're different, but we're all kind of they're all working towards the same goal. And again, heavy sparring doesn't help no matter what camp you pick, right? You can be from either camp, but heavy sparring still doesn't help you to achieve that goal. And I think you both presented a very clear, concise case in that. So if not heavy sparring, Dan already alluded to this. And since Dan already alluded to this and kind of answered it earlier, I'm going to pass this question right back to Kailani so he can explain how he does it. If not heavy sparring, then what? Right? Someone might be wondering, well, if you're not heavy sparring, you're only doing light contact sparring, then can you kind of break down? And I know it's really easy to everyone just says, oh, drilling. And then that's it. Okay, then wrap it up. I could have done that in a 30-second video. Drill more, spar less, catch you next time. But but because this is a long form podcast, it gives you the opportunity to share your ideas in detail. So what is something that you do, specifically a drill that you do, to replace something like heavy sparring? Can you give me like an example of that?
Yeah, sparring. That's just one part of it. No, honestly, if we look at like, let's take the Russians, Dagestani wrestlers. They train for a very long period of time with lower intensity. Americans go really, 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 really hard 3 days a week. And Firas Zahabi talks about this. In a year, those Russian guys get more technical training in than the American guys because you have to have rest days because you're going so hard, right? So what we do is I'm just gonna stick it to my fighters just for now because everybody in my school spars. It doesn't matter who they are as long as they are eligible to spar. Um, we spar twice a week and it's light. It's fun, playful sparring. We are making contact, but it's very light, playful sparring. And there is no better way to get ready for the fight and timing as sparring gives us, right? So we spar twice a week and we spar lightly. And towards as the fight gets closer, we do ramp it up a little bit to give our fighters the ability to know what it's like to get hit, right? But I think sparring is only a percentage of what it takes to become skillful. Drilling or kata is extremely important. I'm not talking about pinyan one. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about there's an uke and there's a tori. And we are in harmony drilling together, whether it's ground grappling skills or it's clinching or striking, whatever. We are sharpening our sword by repetition and repetition and repetition. Then we're taking that to sparring And we're trying to implement that in sparring, but we cannot do that unless we're sparring at a level that, hey, if I get hit, I'm not going to just crumble. I'm going to be able to go, gosh, that didn't work. Let me try this way now. So we're sharpening our sword. And then hitting pads, things of that nature. You can go just what Dan said. We rip it on the pads as hard as we can to get the anabolic rate, right? All of that up, get our heart rates up, going, hit as hard as we can so we know what it's like to hit hard, but we do it on a pad that's not going to get hurt, and then we can put our skills to sparring. So I think to get there, not only drilling, not only pad hitting, shadow boxing, head movement, the whole 9 yards, sparring is super important.
Dan, what's a specific drill that you like your coaches and your instructors to do? Because I know, like I said
So
earlier,
if we're gonna do sparring, right? I try to make it situational. So instead of like, hey, the whatever you want to do it. We're gonna work on guard pass. It's a side, like all you got to do is get the side mount, right? And that creates some sort of level of, I don't know. What, the second you start talking with kids, like they just go right to you, like, hey, dad's on the phone right here. That's what they do. Oh my gosh. Anyway, so like sparring drills need to be kind of set up in a way where you have parameters and you're working within those parameters. So if it's stand up, hey, you're on defense, you're on offense, or hey, you got to work counter punching, or you're working on, I don't know, leg kick combos, and you're going to counter those. And by doing that, you create a level of fun and emphasis on safety, though. I'm gonna mute my mic because kids are getting loud. It's crazy.
all right. So we had a little cutout there, tech issue there. But either way, so same thing though, right? Again, focus drilling, a focus position going through one for Dan's one specific drill. Well, we are getting close to our wrap up. And I always like to give my guests a final opportunity to say anything they think they might have missed in the middle of all this, because I know I always kind of go everywhere. So what's a final message that you would have for the martial arts community? I sometimes say like the Kajikembo community, but the martial arts community does listen to this from different styles. So I'm going to open it up to the entire martial arts community, not just jiu-jitsu, not just Kajikembo, but and if you don't know what Kajikembo is, I always have to say this, shameless plug. At the end of this episode, you'll see a What is Kajikembo podcast. I interviewed John Hackelman, UFC coach John Hackelman, Chuck Liddell's coach, and he talks about how he incorporated Kajikembo into the UFC. That being said, Kalani, what's your takeaway? What's your Jerry Springer thoughts of the day on this?
Yeah, we can, at the end of the day, it's very few people that come in that want to be the next UFC fighter. And when you are only catering to those people, you're missing on 95% of the world that could have the gift of martial arts. And those people can come into a safe environment where they can learn how to fight without fighting each other, in a sense, right? There needs to be a way that we can give the gift of martial arts where people are being more confident, they're feeling better about themselves, and they are learning how to fight. And as they start climbing up in the ranks and they start getting better, they are more confident in their bodies, their movements, their partners, they can start ramping it up higher and higher. Because quite honestly, how many street fights are you getting into in your life? Not very many, right? So you have time to slowly build somebody up and make sure that they stay in martial arts, because as we all know, it's a life-changing thing, right? It's a lifestyle. So whether it's Kajikembo, Jiu-Jitsu, whatever martial art you're doing, gone are the days that the training is not done until I see blood on the floor. Gone are those days. We need to have smart, safe training areas because the world is not like how it used to be.
Well, I don't know about you, Kailani, but every morning I like to wake up and push over a kid on a bicycle that's going by on the way
Absolutely.
to school and start a street fight right then and there because I was raised in the streets, so I gotta
Raised
keep
in the
I
streets.
gotta keep that going.
Absolutely.
All right, Dad. What are your final thoughts?
Kind of hoping I can get them out here. Hold on. I'm gonna turn off my video. Maybe that'll help. Man, the internet's just like bad for me today. And then here I'm talking, my kids start running at me again.
No worries. Just make it
It's
short.
how it's how it is. All right. Final thoughts. Just think about how much better you could be without brain damage. I mean, I got hit in the head too many times. And you can fix a lot of things, but you can't fix that one. And you're doing yourself, your students, possibly your kids or your grandkids a huge disservice by saying, "Hey, let's go out here and let's bang away. Be safe, be smart, think about what you're doing. That way, you can train for the rest of your life. Brain damage sucks, man. Anyways,
So, brain damage sucks. That's gonna be my new tagline every time I start my
yeah,
show. Brain damage sucks.
I don't. I give it like a 1 out of 5 stars. Like I
Yeah.
give it a 0.
Yeah, 1 out of 5. Do not recommend.
Don't recommend it.
Well, everyone, I want to thank you for checking out another episode of Social Gelo with Angelo podcast. You can find Kyle Ilani in Idaho, but you can also figure out Chikota's Facebook page. I know he's part of the Gracie University, and that's a big chain. So if you're looking for, I don't think they need my help with their marketing at all. So I'm not going to go there, but I do want to help out Kyle Ilani. So check out his page. Where can they find you online again?
Yeah, GracieSandpoint.com.
All right, so on graciesandpoint.com. Where can they find you on Facebook?
So Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Sandpoint on Facebook, and then also the same thing, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Sandpoint on Instagram.
Are you doing a TikTok? Do you TikTok?
I don't know what that is. No, I don't do that.
We'll talk about that later. But Dan, where do you want people Dan doesn't want people to find him per se, but he may be interested in having people find his schools. So where can people find your schools and your programs?
Man, and nobody who's watching this is gonna show up and do my program at my school. But I'm happy to help if people need some help with getting their school off the ground or getting it to that next level, or even like a side project. Like what we were talking about. Just I'm happy to help kind of focus it in and get that going.
So a little more
Yeah.
context in what Dan's talking about, because I know his internet's cutting out. Dan not only specializes in running 2 martial arts schools, but he's also a part of a greater network. So if you're a martial artist that's trying to grow your program, and he has a Facebook page, 0 to 100, how to go from 0 to 100 students, and he shares a story about how he built his school from the ground up. So his services might not be so much for someone who wants to train because he lives in the middle of nowhere, but what was kind of spectacular what he did is in the middle of nowhere he created 2 very successful programs, and he's really good at what he does. So if you're a martial artist looking for tips on how to grow your school, check out his Facebook page. And then for me, well, you found me. I have nothing to say. I'll catch you all next time. One podcast once a week about martial arts and also martial arts content. Catch you next time.